Welcome to Wellspring on the Air, where Christian counselors provide practical and biblical insights to everyday living. Why? Because hearts and minds matter. My name is Ivana Rodman, and I am a licensed mental health counselor and the Programs and Education Manager here at Wellspring. Today, I'm also a host, and
I'm Judith Lemus. I'm also a licensed mental health counselor at Wellspring for a few years now.
And we are talking today healing by doing. We're going to explore a particular and unique type of therapy called experiential therapy. But before we get into those specific details, Judith, can you tell us a little bit about what someone might expect just coming in for traditional therapy?
Of course, what most people tend to expect in traditional therapy is what we might call talk therapy. So you come into a room, you sit down on a couch or a chair like this, and you get to talk about your feelings, you get to talk about your problems. The therapist will listen, they'll give you some feedback and maybe help you change the way that you think, help you learn how to redirect your thoughts, help you maybe rewrite some of your story. And so that's the more traditional type of therapy. But what you can consider about that, it's usually very analytical. It's very heavily dependent on verbal processing. So I have to sit there, I have to think about what I'm going through, and then I have to talk about it, which is, like I said, very analytical and sometimes not always easy for everybody. It's not always easy to put your feelings into words. It's not always easy to be able to express your experiences out loud. So while it's very helpful and it's researched to be helpful for a lot of people, it's not easy for everybody.
Okay. Yeah. So more of the logical, maybe more someone who's a bit more in their head would benefit a bit more from talk therapy or the traditional. And so tell us, how is experiential therapy different? What does it do? Can it also be for those people who are maybe a little bit more logical?
So experiential therapy is a bit different. The goal is to kind of bring the whole self into therapy. You really want to embody your entire healing. And the way that it's done through activities. Some of the more common ones are like art therapy. So people are able to, instead of talk about their feelings or talk about their experiences, they get to process it in a different way. So while traditional therapy, the talk therapy, like we said, very analytical, logical processing incorporates the prefrontal cortex, the logical mind thinking of the brain. And we do experiential therapy, it incorporates more the emotional brain, the feeling brain, the limbic system. So it's actually easier to access those areas of your brain than through just regular talk therapy. So we can do that, like I said, through things like art therapy. You can do that with animal therapy, music therapy, psychodrama, role-playing, and those are just some of the examples.
Okay, that sounds like fun. Getting crafty and into, right, like you said, the other part of your brain. And sometimes many of us can be very logical and maybe struggle to get into that emotional piece or emotional side of our brain. And it sounds like, right, experiential therapy could kind of merge the two even sometimes, right? That mind-body connection, and could even provide further healing for somebody. And so, I always find it fascinating how the brain responds, to different approaches, and how we can just do different things and activate different parts of our brain to further healing. And so you mentioned, activities like art therapy, horse therapy or animal therapy, which Wellspring does, by the way, drama and all these things. But what does that look like practically, maybe in a session or in anything that Wellspring provides?
So a really common one, like I said, is art therapy. So for example, in traditional therapy, you might say like, oh, how are you feeling? But like we said, sometimes it might be difficult to be able to even recognize what your feeling is and then to express them out loud. And something like art therapy, where you can just kind of express through color, through drawing, get it out there. And your brain is processing while you're doing that. Like we said, it accesses that emotional part of your brain and you're getting it out. You're being able to express things without words. Things like music therapy also reduces stress levels, increases, the dopamine in your body as well. You're able to process things through rhythm. Other ones, you mentioned the horse therapy or different animal therapies as well. At Wellspring, we only do horse therapy, equine. And that one's really interesting because it allows people, for example, to decrease anxiety and build social skills through the animal, which is sometimes, less stress than with a person. So you start to learn those sort of social skills, where to push, where to draw back, and things like that. Things like role play are also really interesting. Sometimes clients can find it a little awkward, but it's usually really, really effective. So for example, if you're building a new social skill that you're anxious about, you want to learn how to introduce yourself, you could do that. The role play in a safe place with your therapist, who's not going to reject you, or maybe you can go through, what does that look like if you are rejected? And so that's a safe place to start to learn those skills. Role play therapy is also really interesting because you get to express yourself to people who might not even be there anymore. Sometimes you do need to have that sort of catharsis of being able to express yourself to people who might not be safe to talk to, people who maybe have passed away, and so some of that, if anybody's familiar with a little bit of psychology, it's like the empty chair technique. You talk to an empty chair, to somebody who you might not be able to talk to otherwise, and people find profound relief through that process. So role play is really big. And then a specific one that we usually get to do with our programs is, for example, psychodrama therapy, which people get to act out their trauma. They can act out different endings, and it's so powerful to see people be able to reprocess their trauma, their experiences, and find healing and write themselves and act out themselves overcoming their situations. And so these are just some of the ways that you can do experiential therapy, where you, like I said, you embody your whole healing process. You bring all of it into it in a way that goes beyond just talking about it. So it's, like we said, a more complete healing. So you do get a good bit of healing and processing through talk therapy, talking it out, analyzing, learning how to think in different ways. But then you bring yourself into it, you express yourself in different ways, and you work through your healing in a very different way. So it's very, very powerful, even if at first people might feel like, it feels a little awkward.
Yeah, I was gonna say, for those listening in, you might be hearing art therapy and role play and drama, and do I need to be artsy or crafty? No, the answer is no. You don't need to be an artist. Anybody can do experiential therapy, and it'll be just as healing. So, I know I've seen it in our programs. I'm sure you, Judith, have seen it as well, and maybe in individual sessions. So do not fear. You can still do experiential therapy if you're not, if you don't consider yourself artistic or crafty.
Absolutely. The goal is not the artwork. The goal is to be able to express yourself. And I'll admit, as someone who's logical, even though I would say, I like art, but the thought of being put your feelings in color, it seems a little strange to me. But as someone who has done it myself and who's worked with clients who's done it, I can say it is incredibly powerful. And often you come out thinking wow, I didn't think I would get that much out of it. Yes. But you absolutely do. So no stress, no fears for anybody who says I don't know how to act, I don't know how to draw. It's okay.
Yeah, I would even say, I feel like maybe some adults might be a little skeptical, right? They might think, that's more for youth. But, from some experiences in my sessions, right, with adults, and I've used this technique, those have been some of the most powerful sessions that they keep referring back to, when we played with the Play-Doh, and we created our emotion, that really stuck with me. Yes. And that's helped me. And I think about that when I'm trying to move forward. So even for adults, it can be very healing and beneficial. I know, at Wellspring, we do a lot of experiential therapy. with youth and with adults, again, in our programs like Bounce and Restore, also in individual sessions. And, we've shared a little bit about how we've seen some, life transformation through this type of therapy. Is there a particular activity that we do at Wellspring that you've seen impact people, or maybe you yourself, have been impacted by it?
Sure. So one that I personally often use in individual sessions has to do a bit of externalization. So people draw out, for example, their anxiety or their depression or their OCD, and they'll draw it like whatever it looks like to them. And I've had people draw like little monsters or a plant that's choking them, and they get to name it. And it's a really powerful tool, because all of a sudden, it's not the anxiety that's overwhelming me and taking control, and it's my thoughts. It's this little thing that's outside of me, and I get to tell it off, and I get to tell it it's being silly, and I can tell it to shut up and all of these things. And I found time and time again, that's a really interesting one that makes a huge difference for people. It empowers them over their anxiety and their depression. But other ones that we do that are really powerful, and I've seen, we usually do these in our programs, either the Bounce, the trauma camp for the kids, or the Restore for the adults, is something like the Let It Go rock activity. And so this sort of activity is a symbolic action to something that you're trying to achieve and complete your healing from. So for example, the Let It Go rock activity, you've processed some things, you worked something, and you've decided, this is something in my life I have to be able to let go. I want to let it go. I've decided to let it go. And so now this is a symbolic act. And so what we do, it's just like what the name sounds like. You get a rock. Very simple. Very simple. You get a rock. You write what you want to let go. Maybe it's something that happened to you. Maybe it's a grudge you're holding. Maybe it's somebody in your life. Whatever it is, you write it down on a rock. You go on a walk. You go somewhere. And as you think about it, you process it. Maybe you pray about it. And when you're ready, you find a spot. You let it go. You chuck it in a lake, you drop it, maybe you want to bury it somewhere. And so that is the symbolic act that kind of cements your decision, and it helps your body and your mind finish believing that you've taken that step. And so I've seen people really like that one. The other one that I've seen that is really powerful, and I'll be honest, I've done this one myself, and it's really powerful. It's the Renounce the Lies activity. So for example, like I said, traditional therapy, sometimes you're really able to identify, hey, this is a lie I've been believing. This is an anxious or negative thought that I've been believing in my life, and I need to be able to let that one go, or learn how to redirect that. So this is another symbolic act that you take. And so what you do is that you have your lies in your life that you've been believing. So maybe something like, nobody could ever love me, or I always make mistakes, or I can never overcome anything. Whatever that lie is, could be really intense or small, but it affects your life. And so what you do is you go ahead and you write them down on some popsicle sticks, one per popsicle stick. And then you're given, the way that we do it, we have like a little script, and it says, I renounce the lie that nobody could ever love me. And you do it in front of a witness. So it's not just you do it in front of somebody else. And then you go ahead, and as you renounce the lie, you also replace it with the truth, and replace it with truth that people can love me. God loves me. I love me. Whatever it is. You break it and you put them in a paper bag, and then you actually, the way we do it here, you don't have to maybe, we set it on fire. We have a little fire. We have a little fire.
A little burn bowl.
Yeah. We have a burn bowl. We set it on fire. And so that's the symbolic step of renouncing your lies, allowing it to fade, and now replace it with new things. And the last one I just wanted to mention is take it to the cross. And so I really like this one too. It's a symbolic act, when you get to the point in your life when you're like, I can't keep holding on to this. I have to give it to God. I have to give it to Christ, who takes on all of our burdens and all of our sins for us. And so you write it on an index card, a piece of paper, and then you go to a cross. We have a big one. You can have maybe like a smaller one. We have different ways of doing it. And literally you take it and you nail it to the cross, and then you pray about it and you say, God, I'm giving this to you. And it's such a powerful act. It's it's an acting out, a walking through of the decision that you've made to let something go and allow Christ to carry your burden. And so that's another really great one, I think, that we do together here at Wellspring.
And I love that you said earlier, right, that these activities, right, they cement, right, that decision that you've already chosen, right, in your mind. So I'm a hands-on person, so I like hands-on activities. So I like, experiential therapy because of that. I can say, oh, I've chosen this and I've decided this, and now I'm physically doing something, and that, provides closure, again, cements that decision and really helps me to continue moving forward. Yeah. So I know that's what it does for a lot of people, especially for something like taking it to the cross or, renouncing those lies. One of my favorites is the Tile Mosaic project, where clients can redefine their bad thing, right? We make the bad thing, we break it, which is a really fun part for most people, and then we rearrange it to tell a new story, right? And that kind of goes along with our teaching of God can bring good things out of bad things, right? And that's a very symbolic image, right, that they create, where they concede that their bad thing does not define them, and that at the end of the day, with God's help, their story, all of it, can be beautiful. Yes. And so that's one of my favorites. I've done it like 3 times. I love that project. But on that point, right, where God can help us, and we see many times in the mental health world, right, and with Christians, that there's sometimes a little bit of a divide, right, between Christianity or mental health, and, right, should we go to therapy or not, and all these things. And here at Wellspring, right, we strive to provide counseling, education, or programs in a professional and Christ-like and holistic way, right? And so for you personally as a therapist, is there a specific verse or scripture passage that you kind of hold on to as you're seeing clients, or, just as you're working in this field? Yeah,
so I don't think that there has to be a divide between Christianity and psychology. I do think that God has allowed for us to have some understanding of the way that the mind and the body works. And I'm really grateful for that He's allowed that understanding. Is there other things that comes into it that maybe isn't always aligned very Christ-like? Sure. But I think that He gives us that opportunity to learn and heal in this way. And I consider just the way that God works in general, in that we can see in scripture, and I'm sure that most people have some sort of testimony in the way that God has worked in their lives. And He always does it in different ways because He meets us where we're at. I consider God, that He shows Himself to be a father. And I consider, like any father, if you have different kids, this kid needs this and this kid responds better to this. And so in the same way, this is what we're trying to do here, like you said, in a Christ-like way as much as we can, in that we want to meet clients where they're at. Some people are really ready and to talk and analyze and work out and process in that way. Others are not that great at it. And we want to be able to meet them there, whether it be through the art therapy or through equine or through role play, whatever it is that they need. We want to make sure that we can meet them there where they're at as well. And I also consider one of the verses, like you said, that I love very much is 2 Corinthians 5:17. It talks about that we're a new creation, totally new. The old things have passed away, the new things have come. And so in the same way, we want to be able to have total transformation, like a new creation. That's the work that God does. But here in therapy, we want to provide whole healing as well. So not just the talk therapy. If a client needs something else, if they can benefit from something else, if they can cement the new changes in their life through something else, we want to be able to do that as well. So I'm grateful for what the Lord does, and, just praying that we can kind of reflect that and follow Christ in His steps in that way here in Wellspring.
Yes, I love that. You kind of took the words out of my mouth of, so maybe some people, right, do need the talk therapy and others will need the experiential or combination of both, right? We're meeting them where they're at, and God has allowed or given us these tools to help people get there and get that healing. So I love that. I love that. So tell me a little bit more, right, as we're wrapping up, before we go, right, what Wellspring is doing in regards to experiential therapy.
Of course. So like we said, we do practice it in session, in therapy, according to whatever the client needs at the moment. We also use it heavily in our programs. So that's the Bounce Trauma Camp that we have for the kids. We have the week-long one in the summer, and then we've had the extended version throughout the year. And then also in the Restore retreats, and that's the one that for adults, where adults come in and they work out and process and heal from their trauma as well. But currently what we have ongoing is our Come to Your Senses. And so that is something that happens every third Thursday of the month, and where somebody can come for a one-time experience. They come and they experience experiential therapy, and it's different each time. You know, sometimes it's a little bit more art. It's usually, I think, more art focused, but it's different activities, and you can have that one-time experience. You go and you are led through this experiential therapy process where you can work on just processing maybe something specific, or maybe you just want to express your feelings in the moment. It's really unique, very special, and I think it really gives people a taste of what it can be like. So I highly encourage for anybody who's interested in experiential therapy and wants to give it a shot, or just kind of see what is this about, you know, highly encourage for them to look into it, and they can find out more from our website.
Yes, definitely. It's every third Thursday, like you said. It's different activities every month, so you can come to more than one, right, if you like it. You can invite people, right,
Yes.
if you know that people want to start coming to therapy and perhaps are a little shy or don't know where to start. This could be kind of a fun way to introduce them to that. So there's a lot of reasons to come and different purpose there, but it's a great opportunity, like you said, to get a taste of this unique type of therapy. So thank you, Judith, for being here with us today and sharing a little bit more about experiential therapy, right? Healing by doing, that action step, right? That symbolism that can really help people cement the healing that they've done, maybe already in therapy, or that they're currently, processing and healing from. So, thank you again for joining us today. Thank you, everybody, for listening in and joining us. If you want to stay connected, be sure to subscribe to our newsletter, or you can also follow us on socials at Wellspring Miami.
Hey there, thank you so much for tuning into Wellspring on the Air. We hope that you got something valuable out of today's episode. One of our goals at Wellspring is to make mental health resources and content accessible to everyone. We bring mental health experts and voices from our own staff and community to share insights and experiences. We want to keep these conversations going and reach as many people as possible, whether they're into therapy or not, and we cannot do it alone. If you believe in what we're doing and want to see more content like this, please consider supporting us. A donation to our education fund helps us create more episodes, more content, more resources to reach more people. Thank you for your support. Check out the link in our description box to donate, and remember to subscribe to our channel.